Hey guys, welcome to the 10th chapter of the Substrate course. This video will be slightly shorter, but it'll be equally complex because we're going to be using Prometheus and Grafana. So Prometheus is a software that allows you to collect the logs from your Substrate node, basically the health and that kind of data from your Substrate node. And Grafana helps you visualize that information. So as you can see here, my Substrate node is running. Okay, and we've seen this in many of the previous tutorials. This is my Substrate node that's running, and this particular tab here is my Prometheus. So my Prometheus is running here. Okay, and if you see here closely, it says that it's using the prometheus.yml file to be running the Prometheus server. And here I've started my Grafana service on this terminal, and here I have done some querying for my node. So if I say curl localhost 9615, which is where my Substrate node is running, I can see the metrics, and these metrics are basically getting picked up by Prometheus as well. So what we now have to do is I have to take you through how to install Prometheus, how to install Grafana, and the best practices around them, because there are multiple ways to install Prometheus and Grafana, but you need to know the right way. And then we'll do some configurations to the prometheus.yml file, and then we will start up our Grafana server. Okay. Now, please know that I have Prometheus and Grafana installed on my system, and I also have Substrate installed. So by now, I know that all of you would have Rust installed, all of you would have Substrate installed, but you probably might not have Prometheus and Grafana installed. There are multiple operating systems, right? You could be on Windows, you could be on Ubuntu, you could be on Mac. But what I'll do is I'll take you through the Ubuntu installation, because for Mac it's really straightforward. You just have to use the brew command and you'll get the Prometheus and Grafana as well. With Windows, I would recommend not using Windows PowerShell. I would recommend using WSL, which I'm using. In my case, I'm using WSL. So the structure or the commands for Ubuntu and for Windows are the same. So I'm using WSL, which is basically essentially it's Ubuntu inside Windows, so the commands will be exactly the same. So if I take you through the Ubuntu commands, please know that they are applicable to Windows as well, because since I'm using Windows WSL, and that's the most recommended way to do this. Now there is this file that I've shared with you, which is for chapter 10. This is a documentation which I've shared with you, and it mentions all of the links. So in case you need to follow any of these links to install, let's say Prometheus or Grafana, so I've mentioned these 8 links. So depending on your operating system, you will be able to use these. Now the last ones, right, for each of these, so for example, point number 4 for Prometheus or point number 8 for Grafana, they are installation using Docker. So a lot of you would be thinking that why should you install it using the regular installation methods when you just have Docker and you just have to start a Docker container. That's great, and I've kept the Docker installation guides here, but please know that with Docker sometimes you'll have issue configuring the ports for Prometheus and Grafana, because Prometheus, Grafana and Substrate, they all need to be talking to each other. So if you have Substrate installed on your system and you're not using Docker for Substrate, then I highly recommend you install Prometheus on your system and Grafana on your system and not on Docker containers, because getting them to interact with each other could be problematic. If you don't know what you're doing, if you're not highly experienced with Docker, you would have problem because to configure the ports between all these 3 things. So just for a safe bet, because it is a complex tutorial, you're doing a lot of things, just as a safe bet, please ensure you install Prometheus on your system, you install Grafana on your system and not use Docker. And only if you know what you're doing, use Docker. Okay. The best guide. Okay, I've not mentioned this, by the way, here in the link, but I will add it here in the link for Prometheus. The best guide for Ubuntu is actually on the DigitalOcean. This is the simplest that I found for. I won't say simplest. I'll say the clearest actually. So it's the clearest that I found for Prometheus. It's the DigitalOcean link. And what you need to do is now, you know that I have Prometheus already installed, but I'll guide you through each of these commands. So we don't need the node exporter, right? In our case, the Substrate node is the node exporter. So this guy in DigitalOcean in this tutorial, they have installed Node Exporter so that they're able to scrape the data from the Node Exporter into Prometheus so that you have something to actually monitor. But in our case, it's Substrate node. So we're going to configure Prometheus in a way that Substrate, it points to Substrate node and it's able to scrape the data from the Substrate node for the logs. All right. And this is, by the way, called monitoring your Substrate node. So even if you have, let's say, a Substrate node deployed somewhere, you need to be monitoring it, right, to know what's the health of the node and do you need to do any maintenance on it. So that's why we're monitoring our node either with the help of Prometheus and Grafana, which are the top tools in the industry. So you need to run the first command, which will add a user to your system, and the user is basically Prometheus. And then it'll create, and you're not supposed to run the second command like I told you, and you'll create two directories for etc Prometheus. This is where your prometheus.yml file will also be there, your configuration file, and the library Prometheus. Now you'll set the user and group ownership for the Prometheus user. So this is Prometheus, and the password is Prometheus for the user. And now in this command is where you will install or download Prometheus, and then you will get access to the tar file, and you'll use the tar xvf to unpack the downloaded archive. Then you have to copy the Prometheus project, the folder, into user local bin, and you'll change the ownership to the Prometheus user, and you'll copy basically all the related files like the etc files, the console files basically into etc/Prometheus, and also change users again. Then you have to start configuring Prometheus, and this is the important part, right? So it doesn't matter if you were on Windows or on Mac, you would be able to install Prometheus easily. That's not the problem. The problem is the configuring the Prometheus part, and this is where it gets a little tricky, because now you don't have to follow this tutorial, right? Now you have to follow the tutorial that I'm teaching you, which is which is for Substrate specifically. Okay, so let's say you have, so I'm in my etc/Prometheus folder, right? If I say ls, I will see my prometheus.yml file, right? So if you did those steps that I just showed you on the screen in the DigitalOcean guide, you will be able to get to this point where you have Prometheus installed on your system. Okay, and just to check that, you can also say Prometheus ---- version, and if it shows you the version, then that means so in my case I'm using 2.0.0. It's quite old, but still it does the work. So in case it shows you the version, that means you have Prometheus installed on your system. All right, and now you can start changing around the prometheus.yml file. So so this is where things get a little, this is where you need to pay attention basically. Sudo nano, and I will say prometheus.yml, and I'm inside the file now. Inside the file, you need to be adding basically a new job. So when you go to scrape configs, this is the place where it tells Prometheus the jobs that needs to be running and where it should be scraping. So right, so this is the job called Prometheus. That means the Prometheus it's scraping itself and giving out health data about or metrics about Prometheus itself. So you get that data on static configs targets localhost 1990. This is where Prometheus operates, and I've added another job name. So as you can see here, this is a second job name called Substrate node, which I have added. This has a scrape interval of 5 seconds. You need to add this there. And you have the static configs, which is targets, and localhost 96.1.5, which is where the Substrate is running. So you need to have this configuration. Now for this configuration, make sure you get the spacing right. So just a pointer. So just below job name, you need to make sure the job name, the hyphen and the job name is exactly at the same line with job name, and static configs is at the same line as scrape interval and job name. All right. Everything needs to be and targets, the one before has to be in the same line as targets here. So it's since the YML file, so spacing and tabs, all of that matters. So once you have this configured, you can now go ahead and start your Prometheus node. Okay. Now for that, before that, you know that this needs to be working. So to start your Substrate node, I'm in the directory where I keep the Substrate node, where I've installed Substrate node, and I use this command target release node template dev, which we have been using in the previous multiple videos. And you go ahead and you start your Substrate node. Okay, so that's running. Now when that's running, I can go ahead and also start my Now to start Prometheus, there are two ways, right? One is you can start Prometheus with this command, which is /Prometheus and config file prometheus.yaml. Now this is the most important part, right? You need to know that. So there are two ways to start Prometheus. One is to use this command, /Prometheus and config file prometheus.yaml. Now the most important part here is the config file, which is in the sense we're telling Prometheus that, hey, this is the new prometheus.yaml file that you should be using to be able to start the Prometheus server. Or this command, which I found on the DigitalOcean guide, is much better. Okay, so this command I found from the Substrate guide or the Algoroq guide, but this command I found from the DigitalOcean guide, and this works much better, and you'll have like more chances of success with this file. It also gives out the config file and the storage and the web console, so it's a more wholesome command. There's more chances of this working. At least this works on my computer, this one doesn't. So I've kept this here as well. Okay, so just copy and paste this, and this let me copy and paste. I've actually done that, so let me just go ahead and run that command in my system. And here when it says server is ready to receive requests, that means everything is working perfectly fine. Now, how do you make sure Prometheus is working perfectly fine on your system? You go to localhost, you go to 9090, and you say /graph. So when you see something here, you know that something has opened up here, that means Prometheus is working perfectly fine. Okay, localhost 990 /graph. That means if something comes up here, that means Prometheus server is working perfectly fine. And even if it says server is ready to receive requests, that means again it's working perfectly fine. Now there is this command that I've mentioned here in the document for you, is this command, which is curl localhost 9615 metrics, and if it gives you an incremental number every single time you run it. So last time I got 46, and let's say if I run it again, the same command, if I get an incremental number, right, that means it's listening, it's getting data from the substrate node, and everything is healthy. That means now to install Grafana. Now we have come to the second part where we'll have to install Grafana. And installing Grafana, the best source for installing Grafana is the Grafana website itself. So let me show you. So this is the Grafana website itself, and this is the best place you can go. And what I have done is I have installed through sudo apt-get installed. This is what I've done. Like I said, I was using Docker earlier. I had some problems, and now the sudo apt-get, this works perfectly fine. And Grafana, once you have it, right, once you install it, you can simply run it with the help of this command, sudo service grafana server start. Now, in many of the tutorials you'll find online for Prometheus and Grafana, you will see that the tutorials, they use something called as systemctl. So let me show you. So here you'll see systemctl, right? And this is a great way to configure Prometheus and Grafana and all of your services. But the thing is, on my system, which is WSL on Windows, I don't have systemctl. I don't have systemd or the system daemon, right? So in my case, if I run these commands, they don't work. So let me show you what they look like. So if I come here and if I run this command, right, let me just copy paste that again. So if I copy this again and I run it here, actually if I just type the command sudo systemctl and start Prometheus, right, so it says, as you can see, it says system has not been booted with systemd, as in its system can't operate, blah 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 blah. So in my case, you know, systemctl doesn't work. That's why even here you'll see for Prometheus I'm using the other command that I found from DigitalOcean, and for all the other services that I start on my system, could be Docker, could be Grafana, I always use this command, sudo service grafana server start. So if you're like me, you have WSL and you don't have systemctl started on your system, systemctl basically ends up taking a lot of space and a lot of processing power, and it works in the background, and it basically helps you boot up services like Prometheus and Grafana. But since you have WSL working inside of Windows, having systemctl is not very optimum. You can start it off, you can configure it to start systemctl, but it's not the most optimum. So having it off is perfectly fine. Instead, using this command, sudo service Grafana server start, this is much better. And this starts off the server, it says already running. Okay. Now to check if the server is running, all I will do is I will just go to my localhost 3000. So let me actually show you here, localhost 3000. Okay. In your case, if you're opening Grafana for the first time, it will simply ask you for a login. So all you have to do is just say admin for username, admin for password, and you will be able to come here very easily. No issues. But the most important thing here, okay, is the data source. So you have to go to connections and your connections data source. Okay. So you can just search for data source here in the search tab, and you'll find something like this, right? So I'm creating a data source called Prometheus here, and it'll ask me for a URL. So I'll just add localhost 1990. Okay. And I can just go ahead and save and test. So when it says data source is working, okay, that means everything is perfectly fine. That means Grafana is able to interact with Prometheus, okay, and that's exactly what you want, because Prometheus is already interacting with Substrate, and now Grafana can interact with Prometheus. Here, if you add 9615 and if you say save and test, it will again say data source is working, but this is obviously not optimum, because you actually want to be scraping on 1990. This is where the Substrate node, this is where the Prometheus is working. 9615 is where the Substrate node is working. Okay, so you need this. All right, so both the data sources are working and everything is perfectly fine, and that is it in our tutorial. So we were able to install, we went through the installation steps for Prometheus, installation steps for Grafana. We started our own Prometheus server, we started a Grafana server, we started the Substrate node, we connected the Prometheus with the configuration YAML Prometheus file with Substrate, and that we connected that with Grafana just now. Okay, and then we are also able to query the metrics on this file, and we are able to see that this is interacting very well with Substrate. So everything works well together. We have created a complete monitoring system for our Substrate node. So I hope you learned a lot in this video, and in the next video we'll take our learnings forward. Thank you for watching.